Annyeong! It's K-Wave with Hongbin on Money FM 89.3. Welcome to K-Wave. I'm Hongbin Jeong, your South Korean living right here in Singapore, bringing you all you have to know about the Korean wave, better known as the Hallyu fever. Now it's K-Influencer today, and today's guest is an inspiring influencer whose passion for teaching and love for travel has taken her across the globe. Eliza Mikunda moved to South Korea in 2021, where she left behind the comfort of her parents' living room, where she spent much of 2020 to embrace a new adventure in Asan. So, what made her want to be an English teacher in South Korea? And for those of you interested in venturing into teaching in South Korea, what can we learn from her experiences? Well, to find out more, joining us today is Eliza Mikunda, who is a native English teacher in South Korea and a content creator. Welcome, Eliza.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me, Eliza. I just want to get started and ask you, what motivated you to move specifically to South Korea and become an English teacher?
Yeah, well, like as you said, it was in the middle of COVID. I was spending a lot of time at home. And at the time, I had a friend who was also teaching abroad. One friend was in France and the other was in South Korea. And so just seeing their experiences over social media and talking with them and just seeing the amazing adventures they were having while I was sitting at home really made me want to go abroad and do what they did. So I started looking into teaching abroad, and South Korea is one of the best places to go as a native English speaker. Just the benefits they give, the housing, the schools is just one of the best places.
All right. So I just want to ask, before you went to or you chose South Korea as the destination for your journey, have you been to South Korea prior or was it your first time?
No, it was my first time in Korea, so I was actually really highly considering Europe because I have been to Europe before and it would be more comfortable. But no, my first time in Korea, my first time in Asia at all. So yeah, huge, huge change.
Okay, so it is a huge change. I mean, you've never been to the country before
Mhm.
prior to this. So how did you prepare for the move and the new teaching role?
Yeah, so obviously it was a lot of visa work, getting everything prepared. I took a TOEFL class, which is teaching English as a foreign language. So in order to teach in Korea, I had to get that certificate. So I completed about 120 hours course for that. And then, yeah, I just did a lot of, research. I had some familiarity with Korea. I'd watched, some Korean dramas before. So, I just kept doing that and I didn't really know, how else to get information. So that's really what I did
I
to
see.
prepare myself and start learning Korean.
Okay, okay. I mean, when you told your parents this news that you're moving to South Korea by yourself, were they, excited for you? Were they nervous for you? Did they not let you go?
I think it was a little bit of all of it. I've always been very, I say, adventurous. I did a year abroad in Italy when I was in university, so
Mm,
they were used to me, jet setting and leaving home already. And the U.S. is massive. I'm from Minnesota, and I
mhm.
went to university in Kentucky, which, if you don't know, driving was about 13 hours away. And
Oh,
so they were already used to me being very far from home, and I think they were excited for me and happy for me that I'm choosing a new path
wow.
and getting to have all these new amazing adventures. So
Okay. Well, when it comes to, there are a lot of foreign English teachers in South Korea, but their destination is usually in Seoul. Why did you choose a place like Asan?
yeah, so I did a program. Originally, I applied to EPIC, which is the English teaching program in Korea. And with that program, you don't really get to choose where you're placed.
Okay.
So when you apply to that, your application gets sent out to a bunch of different provinces,
Mhm.
and whoever picks you up gets you.
Mm.
So while some people do get Seoul, most people are placed in kind of the outer provinces. And then, so I was hired by the Cheongnam Office of Education. Actually, directly, I sent my application to them because it had a faster application and a
Oh.
faster timeline than Epic did. And so, through my recruiter, he helped me find this job directly with the province. And so,
Mhm.
I knew I was going to be in the Cheongnam province and not in Seoul. But I just got lucky with Asan being my city,
Mhm.
which luckily Asan is one of the largest cities in the province with
Mm.
access to the KTX train station
Mm.
and a lot of buses. So I did get very lucky being in a semi-metropolitan area.
I
even though
see.
I didn't really have any choice of where I was going.
Okay, okay. Then can you tell us more about your typical day as a teacher in the countryside of Asan?
Mhm. Yeah, so typically I work at two schools here. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday I'm at one school, and then Tuesday, Thursday I go to another school.
Mhm.
And typically I take the bus every morning to school, usually 10 to 20 minutes on the bus. And then I have classes from 9 a.m. until noon. So I teach four grades, third grade through sixth grade. And I'm their only English teacher. So we do, all of the bookwork, writing, reading, listening, speaking. It's all me. And then
Mhm.
after lunch, I will do lesson planning and just, study Korean, talk with the other school teachers until around 4 p.m., 4:30 when I go home. And then I just live my life here. I have luckily I've
Yeah.
made a lot of friends, so I'll go have dinner with friends or go to a cafe. I've joined a gym and I do Pilates here, so that's
Ooh.
typically my day to day.
Wow. So how do you connect with your students and make learning English enjoyable for them?
I think it's really my students. They accepted me with open arms my first day. They're so curious and they want to know, who is this foreigner in their country and what am I doing here? Who am I? And so
Yeah.
really, they accepted me with wide open arms. And,
Mhm.
now that I can speak more Korean, I think it is easier for
Mm.
me to both communicate with them and understand them. And even though, I encourage them to speak English, it's been really fun. Yeah, just getting to know them. And
Mhm.
they love games. They love, I try to incorporate, fun things that they like into games, Pokemon, any
Mhm.
trends that were big. Pokemon Bread was huge. The
Yes.
idols, different IVE songs and aespa
Yeah.
songs, and whoever they like, just incorporating that into the lessons is something I
Oh,
really
wow.
enjoy.
I wanna be in one of your classes. They sound really fun. But I'm sure there had been, some challenges arriving when there are no English speakers in
Mhm.
Korea. So, was there any, like, language barrier challenge? I mean, what other challenges
Mhm.
or biggest challenges you faced teaching
Mhm.
English in South Korea?
Yeah, absolutely. The language barrier is a huge one. I think for a lot of people teaching in Seoul, or if you're teaching at a more wealthy hagwon type situation,
Mhm,
you'll have students and parents who can speak English very well as
mhm,
co-teachers and Korean teachers who speak English very well. In my case, that was not at all the situation. I'm in a very rural area. And so
mhm.
while some of my kids do go to, cram school and after school hagwon English classes, most of them barely speak a word. And
Yeah.
I'm the only English class they have is with me. So definitely trying to communicate with them is a problem. Sometimes, trying to tell them instructions for games or
Mhm.
even just explaining a sentence if it's a little more complicated than what some of them are used to. And luckily, I do have Korean teachers with me in the room most of the time. So they do
Mhm.
help with classroom management. So luckily, there's not a huge
Yeah.
issue there most of the time. But a lot of times, even adult Korean people are scared to use English with native speakers. They don't want to make a mistake, and especially
Mhm.
not in front of their students.
Yeah.
So even the adult Korean teachers can sometimes be scared to speak English to me, which can
Mm.
sometimes, lead to breakdown of communication of, oh, this class got moved or we have a field trip. This can sometimes be a little bit of a frantic rush last minute.
Yeah, I see. So, have you learned some Korean since you
Mhm.
moved?
Yeah, I'd say I'm not great at it by any means, but I can hold a decent conversation much better than when
That's
I
good.
arrived.
I mean, only 3 years and you've gone to
Mhm.
that point is amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's been a huge learning curve to be sure.
Yeah. Well, what were some of the biggest cultural differences then when you noticed when you arrived in South Korea, especially since you were in the more rural side
Mhm.
of the country?
Yeah, I'd say probably the biggest one is just the difference between like American, Western, very individual culture versus Korea, where things are more, collectivist and it's just a whole different world,
Mm,
especially in the workforce. I came from working in a small business where I was working directly with me, my boss, and the boss's daughter, and it was just us three hanging out, chilling most of the time, to working in a very you know, structured Korean job where the
mhm.
hierarchies are something that really matter. So
Right.
that was definitely, I think, something I had to get used to working and,
Mm,
knowing, oh, do I have to talk to my co-teacher about this or the vice principal or the principal? Who do I talk to about resolving, even issues when I first arrived, to get my phone plan set up or to get my bank set up.
Right.
Things like that were it felt more complicated the Korean way because I
Mm.
wasn't used to it yet.
I see, I see. Well, you also share your daily life as a teacher on TikTok and your blogs. What inspired you to start, creating content which focuses on this topic?
Yeah, so I think at first I was just consuming Korean media or consuming, Korean TikTok of a day in my life in Korea or expat
Yeah.
TikTok, as some people like to call it. And I was definitely just consuming it for, 2 years. And then after that, I kind of just thought, oh, well, I know this stuff. I've been to these
Mhm.
cafes, I've been to these places, and I can share some unique perspective. I can share some unique things that have happened to me as a teacher who's not in Seoul and
Mm.
someone who, hasn't worked in a hagwon, who
Yeah.
has only done this, public school epic teaching. So I
Mhm.
think that, I kind of found that, within this niche, there was a place for my stories and my voice.
It's amazing some of the content that you put out, but what are some of the frequently asked questions? I'm sure you have plenty as someone teaching in South Korea.
Yeah, I mean, I think my number one asked question is definitely from people who say, this is my dream job. I want to do this. How
Yeah.
did you get where you are? What do I need to study? What do I need to do? That's definitely the number one question I
Mhm.
get.
I see. So what do you tell them when you get those questions?
I tell them you can study anything to be a teacher here. I studied
Mhm.
communications and
Mhm.
now I'm here. So I think that as long as you have a passion for, you know, teaching and a passion for helping the students, and as long as you are an adaptable person who, is quick on your feet and can really, move with the changing circumstances and different cultures, I think
Mhm.
anyone can succeed at this job.
I see. Well, for those who are listening into our interview right now, maybe you've also inspired them to become a teacher in South Korea. So, for those interested in teaching in Korea, what advice would you give them?
I would say, do your research. I love where I'm placed in Asan, but I
Mhm.
do think that I got very lucky. So if you know that you're a city person and that you'll be happy in Seoul, go to Seoul. If you think that you would enjoy a much more laid back lifestyle and full cultural immersion in just pure Korean culture, Korean language, Korean food, and possibly not seeing foreigners at all day to
Mhm.
day, then maybe the countryside is perfect for you.
I see. And before we let you go here, Eliza, what are your future plans? Do you see yourself continuing to teach in Korea or do you have other aspirations?
Actually, this is my last week on my current contract teaching,
Okay.
and I'm taking a slight break from teaching. I want to study Korean more, especially if I'm,
Mm.
am planning to live here more long term. I'm dating someone and it's going very well. So if I do stay here long term, I want to be able to speak the language more fluently. So I'm going to be attending Korean language school for a couple of months, a couple of semesters, and we'll see how it goes. I might go back to teaching after, or I might try to find other work in Korea. But yeah, so far so good.
Well, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Eliza, for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. And if you want to check Eliza out, you may visit her TikTok. It's at Eliza in Korea. Her name is spelled Eliza in Korea. I'm Hongbin Jeong, and this has been K Influencers on K Wave right here on Money FM 89.3.
Money FM 89.3.